Well, good morning, everybody. Warm welcome. Great to be in the wonderful port city of Hamburg, almost home. And I think we have quite a heavy job today because we have to talk about digitalization. It's a subject that the maritime industry doesn't really like. They like talking about it, but they don't like so very much doing about it. And if they like to do it, then they don't like to pay for it. So there's a few things that we really need to debate. We always talk about challenges, but I think what we also want to hear about is positive messages in these times of trouble, that is opportunities. Where are opportunities in this whole game as well? Let me try to set the scene first. Addressable market, that is something that is always a little bit of a mystery, and I also mingle around a lot in the world of startups in the maritime industry, and I always have to put their expectations into perspective. When we look at addressable market for new solutions, that means whatever is challenging legacies. We always assume that there are about 55,000 vessels, commercial vessels out there that are addressable to us. But then we come to what we call the 10-30-60 conundrum. Among those owners, we have about 10%, and it's always the same 20 or 25 companies, and one of them is sitting here on the panel, fortunately, that are actually willing to pick up new ideas, challenge legacy solutions, and are willing to pay for solutions as well, and also face the risk to fail in a first instance. That is probably 10%, if not less. Then you have probably another 30% of companies that are alert and willing to do something, but never as a first mover. So they look very carefully what that first 10% are doing. And eventually they will jump on the running train. Then you have the remaining 60% of the market. You could also link it to countries, and I don't want to offend anyone, but they will always do the bare minimum, optimize cost, and purely driven by regulation. So that is the reality on how new solutions can enter the market. We have a few drivers that are completely new, and that makes us hopeful that digitalization may actually happen. One of the drivers, of course, is connectivity. We are quite aware that by now, almost 50% of the seagoing vessels have a fast internet connection. So that is a real disruptive element. Now we are sitting here and we're discussing what do we do with that connectivity. Of course, not only for crew applications, but also for IT, for OT. And we have a good distribution of panel members who will give us some ideas here. By the end of 2027, it is assumed that 90 to 95% of the vessels will have a LEO. That means a fast internet connection, not only Starlink, there's also Kuiper's from Amazon coming to the market in the near future that will further push this subject along and bring down the prices. So that is already quite a good thing. Now, setting the scene, we also have to be aware that 70% of the owners and managers out there have fleets less than 15 vessels. What does that mean for us? That means that not only in procurement, but also on the IT side in those companies, the availability of skilled people that are not purely captains that have come to shore, but really CTOs, IT heads, and so on, are in short supply. We are talking a little bit about a digital divide, I would say. Companies that understand the importance of looking forward and not backward, and also the willingness to change and really challenge operating systems for the sake of better working areas. We also come into a situation where especially the large shipping companies in the past have worked on the outsourcing model, where operating, for example, out of Europe has been quite expensive. So many of the large owners, managers have outsourced work to the Philippines, to Malaysia, to India, with all the challenges involved. So the question that we want to also ask, will technology or smart technology replace this outsourcing system? And how will it affect us? So I think probably time to jump in. And as a last sentence before we start, we want to kind of create a couple of takeaways for dear panel members of things that the audience can take home, both on the supplier side and the owner-manager side, and what are actionable items. Because what we have had enough is buzzwords. Everybody's talking about AI, but we want to discuss, and maybe that could be your opening statements. Think about 2 AI applications in your particular area that you will utilize or develop, if not already there, that will bring your own operations and your clients forward. So may I ask Mr. Gentleman from ShipServ?
Thank you. So one application that springs to mind is kind of compliance by design. Right now, for instance, hazardous materials and maintaining a list of hazardous materials is quite a challenging task and a very manual task for many owners. But we can actually, with AI, automate and at a line item, identify the hazardous materials and completely automate the item lists. So this is a great application where AI is replacing the manual work which is taking place today. Another application on the supplier side is we all know that the ability to return a quote quickly and precisely on an RFQ matters. The first quote in has the biggest chance of winning. So providing tools that allows suppliers to quickly quote back automatically using the context and leveraging AI to do this. Those are 2 good applications of AI that can be delivered right here and now for customers.
Very interesting. Just to throw in another figure, in my last ship management supply chain job, we found out that still 50% of the requirements of items going back to the poop deck had less than 72 hours lead time, which is also in turn at this moment the chance of survival for ship chandlers, right? Because it's the inability to plan for most of the large customers. Basically you can only plan eventually on the back of good data that you have, if you would agree. Can I go to your direct competitor?
That's me.
Carsten.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So Mikkel, you're talking about AI as a mean of becoming more effective in existing processes, which is fine, and we tend to look at all software as a solution to become more effective. But I then can question more effective about what. So I like very much, Henning, at you, when you were saying what is your main point at the other panel, your main challenge, that is to look at the processes. So I think that we often make the mistake to think that any piece of software or IT solution will solve a problem per se, considering the software as a solution and not the mean to a solution. And the mean to a solution that you have defined a process behind, which is actually the challenge. So I would advise people to sometimes reverse this thinking and not start with the solution or software, but start with looking at the process and see how do we want to run our procurement department and what is our challenges today and how can we improve them. And one could of course be that we have issues with hazardous materials documentation, and then AI can be used, but not necessarily maybe another tool. But before choosing the tools and choosing the means, then let's look at the processes and then decide for the solutions or the software.
Yeah, maybe we must also mention the element of training that we spoke about earlier. Those people that may be replaced by the copy and paste kind of outsourcing activities. Yeah. Of course, we can utilize them, well, right? Yeah. Because the challenges that we face, smart procurement, working out best possible solutions, you need people with drive and heart.
And another thing that we should not get trapped into, that is to leave everything to IT, because then we leave the whole procurement department to the IT department to decide how we want to do business. which is an enormous threat to all of us, of course. So I think that procurement should be driving and be defining the processes, the challenges, the solutions, and then we should apply the solutions based on the capability of the IT department within the procurement department and within the supplier's own setups, because that's the other shortage that we often see, that we may offer nice software, all of us, but very often we are met with the challenge that the procurement is really not prioritized enough within the big organization, meaning that there is a constant shortage of IT resources to execute on the requirements of the procurement department.
Yes, or compare new solutions.
Exactly.
To have to make informed decisions. Yeah. I agree, but procurement and we have procurement and purchasing, right? Purchasing is operational, procurement is strategic.
Yeah.
And we all agree that basically category management for a sizable company is the way to go. That importance and the impact on OPEX is being realized now, I think.
Exactly.
But Mikael, I think on your AI input, let's say one or two real tangible things.
Yeah, thank you. Mikael Weis from Source to See. So we of course work with AI operationally ourselves. We have a platform which is quite different from ProcureShip and ShipServ because we focus on catalog build and actually try to avoid the RFQ and quote. And I know that may not resonate very well with the whole audience, but we're actually doing something we believe the industry has talked about for 25 years, that it would be nice if we could move more towards contracts and actually use those contracts and tenders to build a proper catalog behind it, which can then end up in direct POs with a lot of sufficient data. So what we do on the AI side around this is we use AI to do product cleanup when we work with catalogs, product matching, product categorization. So we use that as an internal tool for our content team, but it is a tool that will be released to the market as well. So this is something the supplier side can use when they work with catalogs, because that's typically the challenge, to get a proper catalog going, to find the right images and find a way to have prices updated on a real-time basis. So that is something very tangible happening right now.
And standardization is a huge point. I refer back to an industry effort we had, eGenie, where the biggest clients and suppliers came together to discuss what is the right standards in quality and descriptions and so on. So I agree. Standardization is probably a big part of this. Yeah.
Exactly.
Now,
so I have one more thing.
Yeah.
Thank you. So this is the operational part of this. Then, of course, going forward, and everyone talks a lot about AI, but the real in-depth understanding of what AI can do for your business is at a very early stage. Let's realize it. We have all tried it, do some searches, identify what books are on the shelves of this picture. It's all fun, it's all good, but that is just a scratch in the surface of AI. This is much, much deeper, and it develops at a pace which is so fast. So we have a vision around AI. We think it's going to be extremely important for us. But the predictability of trade, etc., is something AI can be used for. And even longer term, you could define the needs from the buyer side, and the supplier could define their ability to deliver. And you could essentially ask these two engines to speak with each other at some point. No, we're not talking about removing FTEs, and this is really long term, but I just think it's important that we think about how we can use this technology as part of continuing our strong personal relationship with our counterparts, because that is not going away. No one should be concerned about that. Technology is an enabler. It's not removing relationships.
Yeah, if you look at low-hanging fruits and you see that, for example, consumables, right, technical consumables and provisions, they only constitute about 4 to 5% of the OPEX budget, but by experience, about 50% of the procurement time. And that's not only purchasers, but also superintendents spend their time with that. So it's an obvious case for a digital input. We will talk about that a little bit later. Before we come to the most important part, the user, I want to talk to the representative of PMS manufacturers. One of my very sad experiences over the years trying to verify a lot of different solutions is that the industry requires very clearly what I call a single source of truth. IT departments, technical departments, they don't want to have 200 platforms to dial into for cybersecurity reasons, but also for visibility in one spot. So what that really means is that as a system manufacturer, you have to integrate all those things from dry docking, visibility on logistics and so on. But what I'm getting at, what is your challenge, especially with regards to the most important thing for a system manufacturer that has to build that 360-degree visibility to go from historic extrapolation, which is what all systems do today, into using technology to be forward-looking, looking at preemptive solutions, predictive solutions to make our industry smarter. Dominic.
Thank you, Peter. Hi, everybody. I'm Dominic from MESPAS. Maybe to start with, for the people who don't know the name MESPAS, it's good that you mentioned PMS provider, but here that's a procurement event. So it shows we are doing both. What we do differently to other software providers, MESPAS is running a software platform. We integrate all modules for a technical ship management company. So we have connected modules. One is procurement, that's connected to maintenance and so on.
Can you refer back to my direct question?
Absolutely, yeah. Just to tell where the connection is. And I think everything has grown. So we are in business for more than 20 years. So we now integrate suppliers, or for the last 10 years, we integrate suppliers on our own. And there is one big advantage when you have all those modules, and that's we have this platform. You have one holistic approach, and in the middle, we have a smart data library. So all parties are working with the same data, the ships, the office, and the suppliers. So you don't have interfaces in between. Everybody is speaking the same language. You can compare data, you can analyze data, and you can do good forecasting. And that's, by the way, my word about AI. Yes, you're right, that's a new word. But I think AI should help the user to get the right figures, the right reports when it's needed. And when you have clear data, you can do the right forecasts already for a long time without the new word AI. And as said, the most important in easy words is you need to have one language. All parties need to speak about the same without misunderstandings.
Thank you. Henning, you represent the ship owner on this panel, so the client of all these gentlemen here. I want to ask you the magic wand question. So if you were not inhibited by budgetary or human resource issues, what would you build to run your business?
I think what we could use is one single source of truth, as it was said, but then connected with different modules that could also be from different software providers. It would allow us to have a more tailor-made approach for each individual department and still get the right data. Because right now, let's say theoretically, we wanted to have a different fleet management software. We can't make this decision alone because we have all the other departments connected to it. Maybe for some it works really well, for some mediocre. So the big picture and the intertwined relationship that we have now is maybe even sometimes an obstacle for us to go forward. If I see something that I feel is better, maybe, and I know it's not very realistic because of this interconnection right now. But what if it was more a Netflix model, right? So I can cancel with a 3-month period or 1-month period and go with the next one, get the data and try it out. Now it seems like you're always, you're getting married, and maybe we need more the dating approach.
Well, the investment model for a PMS system for an owner is 5 to 7 years minimum, of course, because so many resources are being utilized to get it running, right? There's still one element in all the systems that I'm kind of missing, and Mikkel, maybe you can, now that you took over the lead for the organization, what vision do you have to utilize our people on board more or better? And that goes back to also what you said. Is it not opportune to really give them authority in a certain framework to look after their own thing? It's sometimes ridiculous when we entrust them an asset of $60–70 million, but we feel that they can't order brooms. So what is your view on that?
I actually support that view that we need to trust the crew. As you say, we're trusting them with a big asset. And I think your statistics are spot on that, we take our best people in the procurement department and ask them to spend 50% of their time on 5% of the spend. And they're not using their time the right way. We're wasting the time of our best people in the procurement departments. We need to focus their time and energy on the strategic category spend. So I think the world is moving in a direction where we will see more of the direct spend and purchases from the vessels will give the autonomy to the crew. I think it's absolutely the right direction. And when we speak to our customers, there's definitely an interest in trusting the crew, and it's also about crew welfare, right? Giving them that autonomy, allowing them to do their personal purchases as well. So, I think it's the right direction.
Carsten, agility of the systems to respond to the challenges that we have. I think there should also be a digital enabler, right? But add this to what you wanted to say.
Almost. As Mikkel was saying, for some it works with giving autonomy to the crew, to the vessels, or at least for some parts of the purchase, and that has been happening for many years with provision. We also see mixed models. We share a client with source to sea, where some of it is being purchased from the vessels and other is being purchased via the procurement system and ProcureShip. So again, coming back to my first point, it's all about how the individual buyer organizations want to set up their business. It depends on what type of vessels, what type of crew, where the vessels are going, the size of the fleet, the capacity of the internal IT, the knowledge. We talked about this knowledge gap, the knowledge and capabilities and resources internally in procurement. So there are many factors that comes at play when it comes to deciding how you want to organize your procurement department. To your question, our target objective with ProcureShip is to deliver a flexible solution that can cater for everything. So we have not only one, we have 3 or 4 different approaches depending on what the buyer wants and how they want to organize their business.
For you, when you look at a little bit at the dissection of the procurement activities, 80% of the volume are bought in 6 or 7 ports, and that sounds easy. And we were talking about contracted procurement. But at the same time, if we are not looking at liner clients that have 12, 14 key ports, challenges for a company like Oldendorff, in my own history, we had 150 active ports and 50 regular ports. How can technology support that in terms of easier handling Maybe for you first.
Yeah, I think one important fact here is data again, and the fact I want to mention is what Mikael said before. One keyword is catalogs, so that we have clear data, and we can also transform the industry as such that we go away from this traditional approach with, let's say, asking 5 suppliers for quotes, having different lead times, if it's even there or not. To have clear data, to have the different ports, to have lead times, to have prices, to bring the market to placing direct orders and not waiting all the time. So we don't like to wait for others. So that's the point I see here. Because I think also in our private life, if we want to buy a smartphone, we go to a website, we check the different prices and delivery times, we hit an order button, we get it.
Or if you buy a smartphone, you know it's that type, right? But the ship chandler friends in this room will know that for most items that you order, they have to keep 3 different qualities. So as long as the industry doesn't agree to standardize, for example, in my own history, we said there can only be one level of safety items. There's only one safety. So you cannot have 2 different harnesses.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Or if you have crew convenience items, we have to cherish our crew. So we can only have good towels, good bed sheets, good crockery and cutlery. But it is a battle, and again, we have this 10-30-60 problem there, that will still remain, I think.
Absolutely agree. Just one thing. So we also need to connect this language of a supplier to the general language, to use the same word as before. So if we have different qualities, we need to have a certain standard that when we look for a product that we see all options, and then we can also place a direct order. I think that's how IT can help. Right?
Yeah. If you want to comment on that.
Yeah, no, I think this ties very well into the catalog thinking, and also to the point made on the last panel about working closer with the suppliers, right? Because this is exactly the point, but not necessarily to work closer on getting more structured RFQs and more quotes and win the first the PO from the first quote, but actually take it to the next level and say, what is it this structure actually can do to operations? So you mentioned liner business, yeah, fixed ports around the globe. A lot of offshore companies are also in a fixed location for a longer period of time. You will see bulk carriers trade between a number of fixed ports for a period of time. So there are a lot of segments in the industry which are very suitable for this model. But I could encourage everyone to not question whether technology is going to do something for us here, because let's be very frank, technology is there. This is a mindset change that we need to work on. It is really where the classical thinking around the ability to quote should be replaced with maybe a catalog structure, something else that also creates a massive amount of value for the supplier side. Because I think that's super important. The vessel side is important, that's the demand side. Software and systems should be very, very easy to work with on board. But the supplier side needs to have an easy time as well, because that means inventory management can be optimized, and your point about stocking 3 or 5 different brands of coffee, and now we need to work on a catalog, and this shipping company has so many captains, they all want different brands, Jacob's Coffee, Lavazza Coffee, etc. No, because when you sit down, back to the point, work extremely closely with your suppliers, you agree what brands should be in the catalog. And that means optimizing inventory for the supplier, that means SG&A savings, eventually better prices for the buyer as well.
In terms of digitalization, I agree with you. What we are trying to create, we call it the office at sea. So we want to create living conditions that are as close as possible to land life, if you want to, right? And we still have what I would call the digital gap. So by now, if a person that owns, or a seafarer that owns 3 devices goes up the gangway, he goes 20 years back in digital time, which is, again, low-hanging fruit for the technology gentleman here to develop the system. But Henning, single source of truth, if you could build your own dashboard, what would you need to see on a dashboard to make your life easier? Or what would you expect from your single source of truth supplier? Not based on history, but going forward.
From my suppliers.
No, the supplier of your backbone system. Like,
oh, that's a tough one. In the end, it's the vessel that decides what they need, right? So, of course, and this is for us maybe more challenging because we don't do liner service. But of course, let's assume I know where the vessel is going 2 or 3 weeks in advance, or 4. Then, of course, I would love to see from a supplier it's suggested quarterly supply, something like this, right? So we're talking consumables. It goes, the schedule is known, vessel gets a report or a message from one of or from 3 contracted suppliers for this port, and they say, hey, this is what we suggest. Then vessel approval, office approval, done, right? 2 clicks, 1 click per site, right? And so this would be something we could have. On the spare side, it's difficult. We can't. We wouldn't know unless the systems are perfectly connected, which they're not. So, and even then, there's differences in what the vessel maybe needs, and maybe to drift off a little bit to the point of AI and technology in general. Of course, it's a great benefit, and it will become even better as we go forward. But right now, on the ground, we battle with things like item comments not being delivered, or you can't adjust columns in your purchase order screen, things like this. So the big picture for us, as much as we like to think about it, the reality often and fast comes back to us, and we deal with small things, and again, what I said earlier also, with tasks that definitely can be automated, thus enabling the purchasers, the procurement team, to go into more in-depth engagement with the suppliers to make sure that we get what we want.
But do you see, at least in the more accessible ports, that at some point we are coming more into an Amazon situation where the guys on board within a budget can order anything from anywhere, not only maritime specialized suppliers?
Yeah, I mean, fast internet on board, why not? I mean, they know what they should have on board, and then we see about the control office-side mechanism, but yeah, in theory, of course, like a catalog idea would work, yeah, definitely.
Okay. Mikkel, what is your vision next 5 to 10 years? Where do you see a system supporting the modern supply chain, also keeping in mind logistic costs? It's also an issue, when you compare, let's say, a spare part just in price. One price is from Rotterdam, your vessel's in Rotterdam, the other price is from Korea. And it seems that the Korean item is so much cheaper, but people do not think through what is the cost of delivery to poop deck. So just asking, is that considerations that you have in mind?
So if the question is around sort of the 5 to 10 year vision, let's talk a minute about interoperability, right? When we pick up our phone, we can call anyone in the world. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of telco operators out there, and it's completely seamless to us. I don't need to buy another phone because I need to talk to you and you have another provider. So actually, it should be the same way in procurement and purchasing. A buyer anywhere in the world should be able to interconnect with a supplier anywhere in the world and exchange electronic business documents completely seamlessly and only have to connect once. We are in an industry where we are asking our suppliers to connect to our supplier portal of choice, and where we don't have the interoperability. So there's a massive waste and 10-finger interfaces in our industry. And we're in the middle of Europe. This has been solved by governments in Europe. I was part of standardizing electronic invoicing and business documents in Europe for the last few decades. So even our governments today don't require suppliers here to go to a particular supplier portal. You can receive the purchase order in your ERP as a supplier if you're supplying a German government, and you can submit your invoice using different service providers. So we need to also make this move in our industry to create that interoperability. So ProcureShip and ShipServ, if you're a buyer in one system, you should be able to connect with the supplier in the other, so we can get real integration also with the suppliers, so we don't have these 10-finger interfaces. So
which requires, of course, modern architecture of your IT platform.
But
and again, that needs huge sums of investment, right?
Actually, all the standards, all the infrastructure already exists out there. There is something called Universal Business Language that standardizes the catalog formats, the invoices, the POs, everything. But again, like any other industry, we thought that we knew better and we're special. But we need to move past that and create true interoperability.
We're almost coming to a little bit of the closing round, so I'll give the baton next to. And give me your 3 to 5 year outlook. Where do you see your system developing? What are the features that you think are necessary?
Shall I go ahead?
Yes.
Yeah, next 5 years, I guess, already went into this direction, is to modernize this the way of how we are buying goods, to have the information available immediately, that we can hit the button, buy, and not that we need to compare and wait, and just to make it less complicated. And that's what we are working on.
Yeah, just sharing experience again. Sometimes for a simple spare part, in my experience, with all the 5 stakeholders involved, sometimes such a procedure would have 20 A4 pages of emails along with it. I think if a system can help to reduce that to 0, that would be a perfect world. Mikael.
Well, I will say that of course, embracing technology further is a key element for us. And then having a constant focus on co-creation with the industry, vessels, the procurement purchasing office, and the supplier side. These 3 cannot exist individually. It is one group in our mindset. And then I just think it is really the key that we think about all the digital and technology as something that helps us. Let's get over that top and change our mindset a little bit. Not be concerned about what it does. Try to play around with it. Doesn't hurt. I'm not a young guy, but I love technology and the digital side of things. And I used to be at sea. Look where I ended, in the digital world in marine. I should be out on vessels enjoying my life, but I work in this world. So I think the vision is quite clear. We will drive a lot of changes in all the technology platforms that we see out there. And actually from you, Mikkel, that what you mentioned just before is kind of a paradigm shift with this, in a way, a roaming setup, which from my time in ShipServ many years, roaming was a no-no word. We would not roam with anyone because we were the big boys and everyone else were not big enough to roam with us. But if this is a paradigm shift, I mean, everyone can coexist one way or the other with different angles to the benefit of everyone.
Carsten.
Yeah, so technology will be easier and easier to use, and also connections will be more and more fast going. Today, still building an adapter between 2 systems can take between 6 and 12 months still. Not only us, but anybody, even with API documentation and everything else. One change that I noticed recently from a very big company that is working together with ProcureShip is that despite they do category management and trying to reduce number of suppliers, they're actually also doing the reverse. In the name of sustainability, they are looking into near sourcing. And that's a new shift in things. So instead of having one main supplier since their vessels are going global, they want to be able to near source items and not, as you were saying, Peter, having small stores provision stuff sent across the globe. So, and that may change also. So on our focus is sustainability. We're working very hard on delivering to the industry. Another thing is ESG and vendor management, which is also becoming more and more important, hand in hand with the new concept of working with more and more suppliers that is pre-approved by the buyer.
It's another standardization case that we're working on, also with the challenges of sanction checks,
yes.
With labor issues,
yes.
particularly in shipyards,
yes.
with data security,
yeah.
corruption issues.
Yeah.
So the quest for transparency will only increase.
Yes.
Some of it will be mandatory, but I think the industry would do a good job in self-manage this issue, because otherwise somebody else will tell us how to do it. And so this is why we're doing that in Smart Maritime Network and with BIMCO. That's starting to work. Yeah, Henning.
Two sides. Vessel side, lower the barrier for the vessel to use the system. So perhaps a well-functioning mobile app, more suggestions from the system, what I said earlier. So a forecast or suggestion that could be made from the system to the vessel, as little clicks as possible, as intuitive as possible. On the office side, for stores, theoretically, if the schedule is known, so for the perfect case scenario, we can have the whole requisition process in the background, and we just have suggestions for POs to be placed. They, in my opinion, should still be checked by a person. Theoretically, of course, this could be also done by system, but I think that checking it by a person has the advantage of then being able to go in this engagement that I was talking about with the supplier if necessary, because it's not always the cheapest PO we want to choose. And then maybe a third point, so this was obvious, spares, logistics. This is something where we can probably use AI, integrate the forwarders as close as possible. We work with them really close, like our colleagues already. Integrate them as close as possible, have the live data from when they were receiving the items. And then, tough one, but give us suggestions for combining of shipments, for example, right? So we have around 72 vessels. If there's a possibility to merge and combine shipments, make us this suggestion. It's too hard for us to know. If you have your perspective on 10 vessels, you don't know about the other 62. This is what the system can do for us. And then, of course, the system also needs to easily be able to split this up again once it's arrived at its destination, so that we can go focus on the individual vessel again from the bulk shipment.
Yeah, wonderful. It even goes further, where now also there's requests for the CO2 load on last mile deliveries and things like that. I think that's quite reasonable. It will come, and optimizations is not only cost, is also in there. I remember whatever we put on weekly console air freights between Korea, Japan, China, and Rotterdam and Singapore, we saved 30 to 40% in cost. So what you say is absolutely correct. Sometimes it goes into a pervert area. I was asked when I was running catering, what is the CO2 impact on menus? So in other words, if you eat beef, then you'll be punished because they fart too much. So I think, you know, with all respect for the initiatives, we have to maintain a realistic view on what should be achievable, and we should reach the first 1 or 2 steps first, and then we can discuss more. Are we done on time?
Yeah, just...
Okay, any questions from the audience before we close? Yes, please.
Henning, services. Just a question. If you apply AI, how do you want to mitigate the risks? Because the system is only as good as you put the question or the task in.
Who wants to take it?
Offer an answer. So when you build these machine learning systems to detect the IHM lines, then you have a data set which you call kind of a source of truth that you always compare your AI algorithm with. So you can actually detect the precision and see if your model drifts off in a direction. So it's all about having a solid data set, and of course also doing manual check and verification. So we have seen these line items millions of times before. You're shaking your head.
Any other question? Paolo.
Peter,
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Can you just give him a...
No, first he wants.
No, I just want a comment to this question from before. Sorry, Paolo. So you can obviously set up AI to check AI, right? That's also a way to deal with things. But with anything new, there must be some sort of manual activity going on until we have reached a level where we are comfortable what is there. But I think it's still, these things are becoming so advanced that it's also limited how much of a data set we do need to vet. And when that is done, then apply some safety mechanisms around it. But it's a very good question. Hence also my comment earlier that the people do not go away just because technology is here.
Paolo, thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, just a couple of comments. So I like the conversation, and you know it's very close to my heart. It's also a little bit important that we underline, let's make sure this industry doesn't go from one buzzword to another buzzword without resolving the first issue, because we're talking about harmonization, digitalization. Now we're talking about AI without having solved yet the harmonization and the digitalization issue. So I think there were a couple of important points made here. On the digitalization, Mikkel, I appreciate really what you said around the interfacing and the interchangeability, because the big issue we're having is that 10% of companies you're talking about is digitalized, but the remaining 80% of vendors are still working on each of your portal manually. The biggest gap to cover here is the interfacing of suppliers into the closer digital gateway, which is the procurement platforms. So that is very important, and I don't hear that buzzword repeated enough. That should be your primary focus as procurement platforms to resolve and as softwares. The second important point, we're talking about catalogs and harmonization over and over. That means I need to sit with, in the next 50 weeks, with all of these guys once a year or twice a year to discuss on whether the yellow handle screwdriver they've been supplying to me for the last 10 years is still the same level of quality of the screwdrivers I want. When I was a kid, my mom was sending me to the supermarket to buy milk. She didn't go in details about buy the Parmalat milk in 1 liter Tetra Pak. I knew that. I was using my brain. I was entering into the place, and I was getting the right things. If I was getting it wrong, I was getting it wrong only once. You sitting on hundreds of terabytes of transactions. The catalogs are there. Take it out from there. Don't ask each and every vendor and each and every customer to sit, because that will not solve the Lavazza coffee issue. Because even if I'm sitting with the ship's under and I'm saying I want Lavazza coffee issue, Dorte want Illy. So the ship chandlers still need to maintain 3 different qualities. That's not the problem. That's the outcome. They simply need to understand automatically from the system and from the previous transaction that every time Paolo has for coffee, he has to get Lavazza coffee, whether he specified that or not on the requisition. And it's quite ironic to talk about catalogs when you guys don't see it, but you have this marine store guide big panel on your head That's the standard. Each and every of the transaction you have in your belly, it's saying exactly what screwdrivers Paulos wants and what screwdrivers Dorse wants. So please tell to each of the vendors which are sitting here, they know already, they need an interface, they need to be able to enter their ID, and then you match that ID with my ID and their ID, and you get the answer. And the catalog is moving, evolving, because all of a sudden, Mr. Ship Supplier in Rotterdam, the screwdriver supplier is bankrupt, and he needs to switch to another one. He cannot sit with each and every customer agreeing whether that quality is still the same. He will just replace the high quality, the medium quality, and the low quality screwdrivers with the high, medium, and low, replace the codes, and keep transacting in a smooth way. So focus a lot on that one, because if we keep talking about the buzzword of catalogs, harmonization, sitting together and discussing that item, it's very likely that we will be here in 5 years' time still discussing about the same issue. And I think that's not a mature industry answer. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay.
Just lady. Oh, sorry, can I just, she jumped in. I'll come right back.
Thank you, Marta Grossman, Reed Reinhardt. I am purchaser, and I think catalogs and optimization, standardization is something which is time-consuming and costly, and everybody wants to achieve. But what purchasers are facing is priority of requisition. And my question is if this AI system and suppliers which are using platforms are working on solution that a purchaser can get information on top urgently needed items, where they are, when I can get them, what is the readiness of the item, that vendors can get interface, what said the previous guy, that I can connect to the system and see, let's say I want to have a gangway now, and where I can find who can supply to me, because like soap will not be top agent.
So Marta, you're talking about a marketplace.
Yes.
Basically. Carsten.
Yeah, the challenge with that is that, as we all know, that marketplace should be able to cover availability in plus 300-400 ports, and that's almost an impossible task. And that's why the RFQ PO still exists. Even we have contracted catalogs in our solution, and even when you have a contracted item for a specific port, still some buyers prefer to send out the RFQ in order to get the lead time and availability. So asking for the availability automatically, having the software to tell you where a gangway is available, I think that's a long way down the road as a solution. That's what I personally believe, because that means that the supplier should maintain warehouse availability online for all ports. Of course, we can decide, let's say that you sit down and say, okay, we have 10 main ports and we have 20 main suppliers, then we can start building these systems around the main ports and the main items that you are requiring. So on that point, I agree with you, but not as a generic solution for the entire world. I think that is simply becoming too complicated for everybody.
Very short one, Christopher. We're
yes,
over time.
thank you. Christopher from Achilles Risk Management Solutions for Supply Chains. We are speaking about avoiding carbon emission on the shipping side on the one hand. And don't get me wrong, I'm really a huge fan of AI, but are you also considering to mitigate emissions which are raised in the AI world? Because everyone is speaking about AI, and we all know Google is building new energy plans to get this all done. Yeah. Do we have strategies in place mitigating this?
Henning, is that a request that you have to work optimized towards CO2 emissions also in supply chain matters?
Of course, that's something we're interested in. I don't know if I can answer this question, but I'm going to try. Because I think that the main emissions from this technology, they are probably carried by the provider, I don't know if you would end up with a huge server warehouse, or if you have a sub, you get it from somewhere, right? So the percentage would probably come eventually like down to the maritime procurement process, but I don't know if, I actually don't know if that's going to be so much more than already the technology we use in the systems.
Now, I will say that what probably is going to be the same for ShipServ and ProcureShip, that we will be in a way facilitators of this information and do some level of also maybe calculations based on the input we get from, for example, suppliers on item level with the CO2 emissions, etc. So that is kind of where I see our platform direction is going. But to become policemen over things, very likely not.
Thank you, Mikkel. Closing words to Henning.
From the user up here. Just it ties into a little bit for what Paulo said, and also from the question. What's really important, and this is not directly meant at you, but kind of, you know. So remember who you're developing your software for, and remember it's not just the buyers, but it's also the suppliers, right? Because they are expected then to use the software. And so then we might run into problems, what Paulo was talking about, or even the requisition case. If it's intuitive, and if you listen to what your customers and sub-customers want, then we can make things like this work. Because if we have a requisition that's super urgent, and we know where we are coming with the vessel, there is a way to have quick answers from the suppliers if they know how to easily use the software, and then, you know, have alerts and whatnot. So it's really important that before we talk about the big picture AI and Mars missions and stuff like this, you know, we talk to each other and we make sure that we look at the framework and set it right.
Thanks for that good final takeaway. And for a final, I want to say we're discussing digitalization, but the reason why we're here and why we're so passionate about what we're doing is the people. So let's never forget the element of people in our new digitized world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Can I also just say thank you to Peter for managing that session, and also to the panel. Thank you very much. We're now, well done. We're now going to break for lunch. Lunch is being served just out here in the foyer. We're scheduled to come back around 2 o'clock just after, but please have some food and drink next door, and then see you just after 2 o'clock, okay? Thank you.